this financial pressure, I don't know about you, but I know for myself, I mean, I've learned to withstand it over the years, but that financial pressure creates a shit ton
Yep.
of stress
Yep.
and anxiety on top of an already exhausting career. I mean,
Yeah, it's true.
we deal with so much pain, and
Ugh.
to add on to the pain of this
Oof.
business, these financial pressures where we're not seeing the returns more often than not. To quote Hormozy, and entrepreneurs being, punched in the stomach over and over again. You really have to consider your mental health. No bullshit. You really have to go, am I the kind of person who is able, we were saying this earlier, to withstand this stress and
I think I take
anxiety?
it for granted always how tough of a skin you need to have. This thing that it looks like I'm not going to book. I assumed I was going to book. I am not. I assumed this was in the bag. I was basically, like telling the story in my head until I close people that I booked it. And I was like, here's all the things I'm going to do.
I'm going to buy my house.
Buy my house. And and what's wild is, okay, so that doesn't go. And guess what? It's like you said, that emotional rejection on top of the that monthly
Exactly.
minimum
Mike's
payment.
knocking, for those listening. He's knocking on the door.
That monthly minimum payment.
Exactly.
The knocking on the door. It's on top of emails not being responded to, on top of people ghosting you, on top of nobody giving a fuck about you. I mean, it's wild when you think about just how fucking difficult this business is. We have been told to be terrified of debt. This episode of Creative Risk is all about how that is probably not helpful for most artists and entrepreneurs, for that matter. Anyone who is trying to grow a business, anyone who is self-employed trying to make something on their own, debt may be, an unavoidable necessity for a long time. And this episode is all about how, we shouldn't be afraid of that. So me and Joshua are going to be sharing our unfiltered thoughts on debt. We're going to be drawing from our own experiences and the lessons we've learned along the way. We're going to go into the challenges and stigmas and truly the cons, of course, of having debt, but also, why it is useful, giving you a lot of examples of people who have used it for growth in the past, and then how to manage it effectively. So if you're ready to reframe your relationship with debt and embrace its potential as one potential funding source when it comes to your artistic career, keep listening to this episode. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a subscribe, follow us. And if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Even if it's 1 star, we will actually read it on an episode of Creative Risk. We've only gotten 5 stars so far, but we'll read all of them. We appreciate you guys. And if you want some even more exclusive content from Creative Risk, whether it's additional episodes of Creative Risk not available anywhere else, a whole additional series we have called Weekly Gaze, Weekly Get At It's, that are like weekly motivational episodes to start your week out right. Access to community perks like a book club that we do. Check us out on Patreon. So that's the Creative Risk Patreon. We're actually going to be offering a slew more of perks there as well in the coming weeks. So check us out. All right. Without any further ado, let's get to the show. I am so fucking excited. Because I know Monday we have that meeting in the morning, but I'm out of pocket next 3 days, baby. That's it. If you look at the look that Joshua's giving me right now.
No, yes, I love it.
I don't think I've done like a proper, even though this is not really a vacation. It feels like, even though I'm going away for like 1 day to somewhere nice, this feels like a proper, like a little respite.
Well, you know what I've noticed. You know what you are good at that I'm certainly not good at, but I also don't want to be good at. I'm not. It's not a criticism. It's a personal thing. You like to compartmentalize,
Yes.
meaning meaning like you're like if I'm having time off, it is time. I don't want to think about anything else. Like when we were doing the play and you were like, I don't want to think about like you'd be like, now is not the time to talk about. I really respect it. My brain doesn't do that, you know?
Sure.
So like even when I'm like on vacation, remember like we work many a time when you're on vacation or I'm on vacation. But I would argue that probably your approach is the approach. Like not even worry. You're turned off, you're not doing anything. You're just going to be free.
Yeah. No, well, one thing that I want to do a whole episode on. Well, we'll see how much it works. We'll see how we stick to it. But these maker manager days, I think, are like the secret sauce, which is basically, this idea of like you have certain days designated that are just open days for you to do the the big shit that really moves the needle forward. Like what are the big projects that need like deep work that move the needle forward? Whether that's writing or content creation or whatever the fuck whatever it is, bigger doing your website. I don't know, like what are the bigger sort of projects that need, and then designating certain days. Like today is a manager day where it's like anything that requires me to meet with somebody else, like that to happen, basically piling all your meetings and like anything where you have to meet other people into one day. I think it's really, yeah.
Well, where I'm with you, where I'm with you is like, and it's funny you say this because I've actually heard a lot of people talk about this. You'll hear people say, if I have something to do at 4 p.m., it's like I can do nothing else before it. Meaning, I think this is actually a thing for a lot of people of like whatever is made up of their day. If they've got 7 meetings, it's near impossible for them to get a lot of work done in between. It kind of feels like you're just kind of like sitting on the edge of your seat waiting for the meeting, as opposed to I'm not taking any meetings and I'm just doing the work, whatever that work is, for themselves.
Well, it allows like deep.
And
I think the deep work is essential. I think having deep work chunks. I'll also on those manager days, by the way, is that's when I'll do more incremental work. So I'll do like 15 minutes on a bunch of different things on the manager days. But then maker days are like just big chunks of time.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a review, and this has nothing to do with time management. We're talking about debt today. Yay.
Yeah, we're talking about debt today. Fun. Debt for actors. And we're
debt
asking
for actors.
the question,
Talk about
is
niche
it worth
topic.
it?
I wonder how many listens this is going to get. 2 million.
Is this debt worth it? We're going to get into that. But first, we're going to read a review of our podcast.
Hey.
This is from February of this year. This comes from Tiny Danceuse. So Tiny Dancer, I guess. And it's 5 stars. And it's called Must Listen for Creatives. And it starts, this podcast is not for the faint of heart, but for creatives that are ready to face the reality of the industry and truly take their art and impact to the next level. Hilarious, honest, and feels like you're in the room with them. Lots of honest interviews. The Owned Audience podcast, which I think was number 12, is gold. P.S. Not for people who get offended easily. Laughing face. So
say the F word right
now. Are we offensive?
Say the F word.
Fuck
no,
you.
The other one.
Fuck you. Fag.
I can't say it.
Okay, but I think the C word is making a return.
Cunt? Cunt's fine. Why is
cunt's fine, but faggot's not?
Well, because cunt is not. That's not like a.
Some people are very.
I don't get that. I don't get. Well, it's a body part. There's no. It's like when you say that word, they're using a derogatory term to describe somebody. When you're talking about someone's cunt, it's like you're cunt. Or you're a dick. It's like, what's the difference between cunt and dick?
Sound off in the comments, y'all.
Cunt
What do
and
you
dick,
think of
sound
the
up.
word cunt or?
In a
I
post
would say
row
cunt and cock.
world, where does cunt fit into our vernacular?
Also, again, I think cock is synonymous with cunt, not dick.
Cock, yeah.
I would
You
say dick
fucking
and
cock.
pussy, cunt and cock.
Yeah. Dick,
So
dick and pussy, cunt and cock. Yeah, that's true.
I'm just laughing, like literally
Yeah.
following that review. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah,
So
offensive. LOL.
for example.
Wait.
Okay.
Guys, but we need more reviews because that's all the reviews, right?
Yeah, I think it is.
So go to Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, because I can't. Apparently, you can't. I don't think you can.
We
leave
love
a
the
review on
text messages we
Spotify.
get. They're useless.
Yeah.
They're useless to us because we can't commodify them into something, because it's
I'm
not
looking.
shared to the world.
Yeah, because I don't think you can leave a review on Spotify. Although we have only 5 stars there.
Well,
I don't see where you can leave a review.
oh,
So anyway, leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts. It's helpful. Helps tells those idiot artists out there. I'm just kidding.
bunch of dick, cunt, pussy, cocksuckers. Anywho, let's talk about debt. What a triggering
friends.
topic.
So, but low key, high key. Yeah, because this is something that artists, actors in particular, all of us bump up against, right? Because we all go get our great training and whatever that is, then we're put out in the world and we're basically told, like, yes, you have to invest in headshots, right? You're gonna get headshots. You might have to take some classes. It's gonna be, you're not gonna have a ton of money, but there isn't really like a conversation around like the amount of investment potentially needed. Again, like any business would, like we're gonna talk about that. But there are obviously real pros and cons, and I would argue this always, Mike, this always comes back to artists and actors understanding innately what it means to be an entrepreneur, which I know we've said over and over again, but the definition of which a person taking on or organizing a business, taking on above average financial risk in order to do so. So that's baked into the definition. And that financial risk comes out of the need for investment.
Well,
and that investment, just to say, sorry, then please jump in. I know I'm babbling on, but that investment often is money that we don't have.
Correct. I mean, it's
and obviously for the normal Joe or Jane or Jay, zero debt can absolutely be the goal, right? Because who wants to carry debt? It makes it near impossible to really grow any sort of financial solvency. But that's for people who aren't necessarily building businesses and might have steady jobs. But what I posit, and maybe I'll be in a different, I mean, you know this about me, we've talked this many times, but maybe this podcast episode will reveal something different for me. I would argue it is an unrealistic expectation for actors to assume, unless you are independently wealthy, have a trust fund, that you can live debt free. That's what I'm asserting.
And by the way, 100%, I agree with that. The living debt free is an unrealistic expectation. So, the question is, I have, and we'll get to it at the end, is like, okay, how do you? And I think, by the way, it's probably unrealistic. Now, maybe some people would shoot me for forever. Unless you're a major celebrity, unless you're like, but even major celebrities,
Robert De Niro.
Well, yeah, major celebrities.
That's
Robert De Niro, like a lot of people take on debt. It's a lot of, if you are investing in something and growing it, that which you do not have to do when you're an employee. there is a likelihood that unless you are really at the top, but even if you're at the top, you're going to tell me that, like, when Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul started whatever Dos Hombres, that they probably took on investment, but that there wasn't some debt accumulated. Like, starting a business always, and so maybe, but let me say this, right? Take that Dos Hombres example. Now, maybe they don't have to go into debt when they need to invest in their career. They've built something else that can fund everything else. Smart,
Yes.
but if you are planning on growing, the chances are that you will probably have to take on some form of debt. Now, you
Right.
know, of course, like you said, if there are other better ways. If you can grow secondary income streams, that will, that's the ideal. But then, how are those things going to grow, et cetera, et cetera? I have a client who makes $1,000 a month. From, like, he runs share grid rentals. And it's really helping him achieve financial freedom.
What kind of
Share
rentals?
grid, it's like where you rent, it's like community rent. Do you ever heard of share grid?
Uh-uh.
So it's people who rent out their equipment. So I have a camera,
Oh,
I'll
yes.
rent it out for
Yes.
X number. So but he took on a lot of debt to build that. He's paying it off,
Yes.
but he took on a lot of debt, and now that financial freedom is allowing him to do other things. It's like, you
Yes.
know, it's a piece of the puzzle.
Well, no, no. What you're getting into, and we're going to get into, I think, is talking about balancing debt.
Right.
Because to you, I think you bring up a good point, and I think it's a good point to assert right at the top, which is like, let's just say that you are going to take on and assume debt potentially for a very long time. That's going to be a hard pill for some people to stomach, because there are lots of people that we work with, that we know, artists, who are very much not comfortable with this notion, work towards the very understandable goal of being debt free, but in doing so ultimately hinder their career.
100%.
We
Because they're
have a few
waiting for
examples here.
magic. Well, what are they waiting? They're waiting for an
Exactly.
influx of cash to come from where?
Yeah, the Broadway show. Okay, great. You make $2,800 a week. I promise you that ain't going to be enough money to get you, 30 steps ahead. You've got to be really
And just to
working
break it
at the.
down, let me just
Mhm.
say, or even your series regular role. Okay, so great. Your television. How are you going to get there? Again, how are you going to get that
Right.
television credit?
Exactly. Exactly.
Unless you're just purely relying and playing in the game of agents and agents pushing you, you are probably going to get your,
Absolutely.
now look, the benefit of social media is that there's a lot of free ways to build an audience, to build a name for yourself, sure, but probably inherent in that are marketing materials, self-producing. We'll talk about all of this, but how are you going to get to that magical day where you are acting and making a ton of money? What we are positing is that you're probably going to have to do some things, networking, community cultivation, self-producing, that
And
require investment.
and just to say, just to talk about like some of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world here, because we have some examples of them. In 2008, Elon Musk nearly went bankrupt with Tesla. He had poured all of his own money into that and SpaceX, which, by the way, which was subsisting at the time largely on personal loans, and still to this day is a cash cow that's taking so much money. And
A
yet,
cash
whatever your
suck.
thoughts are on Elon Musk, a cash suck. Yeah, thank you. What's the opposite of a cow? What sucks? Don't
Oh,
insert joke here.
a twink.
But he a cash
A
twink.
cash twink, because it's not a cow, it's small and it sucks.
So
Are twinks normally
SpaceX is a
bottoms?
cat. Usually,
Uh,
don't. There's gonna be plenty of twink.
yeah,
I'm not. I'm
twink.
a.
Well, we just
Although
offended twink representation.
apparently there's like a whole thing about like big dicked twinks. Anyway, so Elon Musk is whatever your thoughts are on him, a great example of, I mean, look what he did with even Twitter/X. I also love how everyone, like, even in our most recent podcast episode with Clayton, everyone sort of like where it was a bit of a faux pas, everyone low-key dismisses X and Twitter these days because he kind of fucked up with it's so confusing what he did, but he put 40 something billion dollars into it. Elon's a great example of, like, he takes on debt because that's how it's investment, right? In a lot of ways. Walt Disney is famous for having
America's favorite
shouldered a
Nazi.
shit ton. Uh, was he a Nazi?
He was a Nazi sympathizer.
He
You didn't know?
he
You
didn't
didn't
like
know Walt Disney
Jews?
was a Nazi sympathizer?
No,
Oh, I thought you knew that. Oh, not that.
no.
I mean, not that I don't like Walt Disney.
He's anti-Semitic, or he's a Nazi sympathizer?
He was a Nazi sympathizer and he was anti-Semitic. I mean, those are kind of no. He was a Nazi sympathizer, but he loved the Jews. Listen, I love the Nazis. I love the Jews. Love them both. I have friends with everybody.
Okay, so the Nazi Walt Disney, he shouldered a ton of debt, and just to say, though, obviously became one of the largest corporations in the world. The founders of Airbnb,
Yeah.
tens of thousands of credit card debt to launch what is now also, a global company
Right.
that is worth billions and billions of dollars. And I love this story. You actually told me this story. I think you were the one who told me this story about the FedEx guy.
Right.
The guy who, I'll tell the story.
Oh yeah, no, you tell the story.
Guy who
No.
so
Smith.
this is the founder of FedEx, right? And the company was on the brink of bankruptcy in the 70s, and there was literally only like $5,000 left in the bank account. And with that money, he flew to Las Vegas, and he gambled with that $5,000 in order to make enough money to pay some bills and keep the business running simply for another week. Within that week, he was able to secure additional funds. We're going to talk about artists who've done this as well, but the real point is, like, global fucking phenomenon companies that started with oodles and oodles of debt.
It's hard, yes, because it's really I mean, look. That's what's wild, right? What's wild is when we are, we think that the starving artist phenomenon is just unique to us. I mean, it's really not. In fact, this is where entrepreneurs and small business owners have so much synergy, is because, we were talking about this last time. It's like I truly, like, I truly need to probably be living even more frugal in some ways than I am right now.
I'm sure.
And we all can do that, absolutely. But it's like this is a real commitment. This lifestyle. It's like I keep thinking about David Ajme. I keep thinking about the guy who wrote Stereophonic. He's in his 50s. This guy was living in somebody's beach house for the past 10 years.
Right.
It's like that's
right.
This is what's beautiful about entrepreneurs and and why we can relate to them is because they do the same thing. You hear about that guy, whatever, Andy Frisella, that guy I've kind of shared. He has that Real as Fuck podcast. He's a little crazy, but he started a supplement store. That's where he started. He was living on a cot in the back of his supplement store for like five years. And by the way, not an overnight no overnight successes here.
Right.
You are living this hand to mouth existence for years in a lot of scenarios.
Well, and part of what's, if I may, you listen. I am not proud to say, like, I'm happy to say that we both carry debt. The business carries debt, and that is a matter of, again, exactly what we're talking about. I mean, you and I have had this conversation for many years, and part of what's hard about it, if I may, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but having a lack of money at times makes you feel like a failure. It's also incredibly frustrating. It's demoralizing. It's exhausting. And it makes you really question things. You've got to be so committed to the follow through and
100%.
can't let those periods of of the real valleys that come along with sidling debt to invest. When we started creating a bunch of e-learning shit, we took on a shit ton of debt because we needed new equipment, we needed all kinds of things, and we're still paying it
That's a
off.
great point.
And
Yeah. Well, just
what's
that,
my point?
here's the here is where debt is interesting, right? Because it is vicious in the sense that, like, you get further and further into a hole, right? You get further, you
Right,
spin deeper and deeper into a hole, which is real. I mean, it's
right,
crippling in so many ways. The flip side, though, truly, I'm not here to say debt's good, but we're not here to say debt's good and that you should have debt. But what we're trying
right.
to do is say, hey, you probably will have to take some on, and there is no shame in that, because because also what debt does is it has to make you double down. It's every day when you are taking on more and more,
Right, right,
you have to make it work. You have to find a
right,
way to make it work. You have no choice. And so,
right.
as people are growing and investing and getting deeper into these holes, what I would argue, like, and look, it's not, we're just giving the positive story. There are people who have gone deep into these holes and have not seen the light, have not come out on
Absolutely.
top.
But that's the risk.
That,
Entrepreneurs taking on greater than average financial risk. And that's risk, risk,
but
risk.
could you imagine, like, those Airbnb guys, like, going probably in so over their fucking heads, and just having to keep, like, it's almost like you're tunneling, and then you tunnel and eventually you come out on the other side, and you don't know
Sure,
if that's going to come, when that's going to come. But you're right, that is
sure.
the and so how do you keep committing? Do you keep going after it? Do you keep chasing it?
Right,
Do you keep committing? While, of course, we're going
right.
to talk about, ways that you can handle this. It's hard.
And I would argue that for those of you who are mulling over this, I bet you many people are in debt. In,
Of
in fact,
course.
I included this fact too, but a survey by Actors Equity found that 70% of actors have some form of debt, with most of it being attributed to career-related expenses. So to your point, then you sort of have to go, because again, so I'll come back to this question. Do we understand what it means to be an entrepreneur? Because are you the kind? Again, you and I have had many, many, many personal conversations about debt and how to deal with it. And it is not for the faint of heart. And if you are someone who's like, will not carry debt, then the question is, well, are you then actually prepared to be an entrepreneur? Because yes, what I at least, it is hard for me to really see a world where any business, very much ours included, is able to procure some amount of capital, or start with practically nothing and grow so incredibly organically and stay in the black every step of the way. It literally does not make practical sense to me.
Well,
So
we
then also,
know. I
as we're
mean,
talking here,
we've know. I'm thinking of. I'll bleep the name out, but, like, someone like who you've talked about,
exactly,
who's like,
huge star.
who's a
Oh, well, a star.
well, yeah, star, and, like, but is having now, that's somebody who probably, not to be, like, rude, but where's he at? And here's what I mean by that. I'm not saying that, he's not, but like, that's somebody who experienced some career success, like big career success. And
Yes,
it sounds like has had some financial that's money that should have gone into the next fucking like, if we talk about this all the time. If I were to, book something big tomorrow, a lot of that money would probably go out the window, in the sense that it would go to,
right,
or not out the window, it would go into the business, publicists,
right.
producing,
Yes,
commissioning work,
yes,
social media team. Yes, of course, a lot of some of it would go towards. I think about, bleep out his name again. Someone like, it's like, it's like,
yes,
where is that
exactly.
investment into growing into the next phase? It's like, where is that
Right.
investment? And it's Yeah, it's hard.
Because well what's good is let's we're sort of talking about it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the assumed expenses, and we've talked about a better version of this before, but how it might
Right.
relate to debt to some extent, like just based off of, and we know some of the obvious ones, right? We know that, like headshots, but again, for me,
So
this is an
expensive.
interesting example. Yes, and when people are like, I'm not paying $1,300 for headshots, I'm like, okay, it doesn't. You go to David Knowles because he's one of the best, and I'm saying this because when you talk about the quality of your materials and how important they are, why would you undervalue essentially your calling card? Or we talk about we were talking about this in another episode the other day, your reels. We live in a moment where your headshot and resume are not enough. We hear this all the time when cast are clicking through. They're clicking on your reels. We promise. It might not be a shit ton of money, but do you have to invest in an editor? Obviously, classes, teachers, coaches. Now, this is going to be different for everybody, but you want to be better in film? Well, then maybe you do need to find a way into crack hours class. You want to compete commercially in musical theater, then as you know, I wouldn't go see the teacher in New York who's $65 an hour. It's probably not it. You probably need to go see the person who's $200 an hour. To your point with the social media team, I hear this all the time. We struggle with I hate social media. I just wish I had some help. Okay, well, what if you put $500 towards a month towards someone who can help manage those socials for you, or a publicist? If I were to get the show that we were just talking about before that I'm up for, if I were to get that, you know don't you think I would absolutely reinvest in the same publicist that I work with? Because why would I not? We live in a moment where, as I get older in this business too, it is about I would require more investment, relationship building. I always lift you up for this because you're always good at it. But whether it's gifts, taking people out, yeah, that shit might have to go on credit cards.
Seeing
Those are all
shows.
just seeing
If you
shows.
wanna,
Yes.
if you're somebody who, I mean, at the base, like at the basis level for like beginning people who don't have, who don't need publicists or not putting out enough social media content where they should invest in that. But they need, you're right, like great, like
Yes.
normally like normal expenses, I would say like great materials, great materials, fucking, seeing stuff if you're trying to break into theater, but also this applies to like, film stuff too, like going to see movies, screenings, signing up for memberships at Gotham or whatever the fuck, like all of these things.
There's this guy, I just started working with. You. We'll bleep his name out. The new guy
Yeah.
who's doing big shit. I mean, like, been regular on things, works all over the world, and he said to me, he's like, he has a publicist, and he was like, should I be going to Tribeca? Should I be going to Sundance? I'm like,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
But you get a
And he's like,
guest
well, because
pass
that's gonna
$500, whatever the fuck that is, like, or an all access
that's
pass.
a worthwhile expense based on what his goals are. It's like, absolutely, put that on a credit card and get your ass there if you want to move the needle. we actually excuse me, we have some examples of self-producing, and I have a question
Yeah.
for you about this, but I'll say this. When I was 18 years old, I remember Jeffrey Self and I we wrote a musical, and we put we opened up a business account, and we got a credit card, and we put the entire show on a credit card. The entire thing, tens of thousands of dollars. And I was paying it off for years and years and years and years and years. And I say that because self-producing obviously is one of the biggest ones
The
in which
biggest,
that you're going to
probably.
likely accrue, probably the biggest, where you're going to accrue potential debt. And we have some interesting examples here.
Yeah.
And then my question for you, by the way, was going to be about like the things that you've produced, like with Gus and the like, how those were paid for, and
Credit
if any of
cards.
that
Well,
was
fund
debt as
some
well. Yeah.
fundraising, but even the things that I fundraised for to get them over the finish line, credit cards. Now, look, let me say one thing, and I forgot if we're going to talk about this later before we move to self-producing, but it's a good time to bring it up. I'll never forget Logan. I'll shout out Logan Chase. When we were doing a group coaching thing, we were talking about debt. He goes, he said, I had somebody said to me once, if it's okay to go into debt if it's geared towards growth. And I think that is I don't always stick to it, but I think that's a wonderful rule of thumb. If you are using debt to if I am using $1 of debt to hopefully earn $5 in the future, if that is how I am spending my debt,
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
sense, right? Because yes, with interest and everything, that $1 becomes 3, but you're trying to make 5. And so if you are using your debt, I think a really good rule of thumb is like a starting place to go, how much or what at the thought is, well, think about if you are using your money to grow something as opposed to like buy a new
Mm-hmm.
pair of shoes or whatever the fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so with self-producing, this is a perfect example. Now let me say the big mistake I've made in the past with self-producing. And this is why I haven't self-produced to that level in some time, because those when I went into that debt, I was not gearing these projects towards growth. I wasn't thinking about the other side as much. I was thinking I had these things that were inside of me that I
Right.
wanted to make, that were speaking to me, which is wonderful. But then I did not do the next level, the smart business work, which is to go, how am I going to turn this into $5 later on? I'm not talking about monetizing a short film, even though that's great, but how am I going to use this to build relationships with valuable
Exactly.
people, like, whether that's directors or casting or, producer. How am I going to use this opportunity and leverage it? So yes, I've gone
Well,
into
this
debt,
is
but you need to
where
consider
this
this.
is.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's a really good point, because I think this is where we often will hear people say they get frustrated about the idea of self-producing because it didn't pan out. It didn't give them all the rewards they so
Right.
wanted. But then the question is, well, were you self-producing
Right.
strategically? This is why we talk about strategic
Right.
self-producing. It's one thing to express yourself, to get that movie out about, your little cousin who hurt her foot that one time. But also it's another thing to go, well, how does this play? Because here are some, I didn't know this again. So Matt Damon, I didn't know this, and Ben Affleck funded Good Will Hunting on credit cards.
Yes.
Didn't know that. Louis C.K. self-financed Louis. Before Insecure, Issa Rae produced herself The Adventures of Awkward Black Girl, which was a web series that was later turned into that hit series. We're going to have Makai Leon soon, who did For the Boys. That has some exciting traction. That's an interesting example of that. Kevin Smith. This is fascinating. Put Clerks on credit cards and sold his entire comic book collection to make that
Mm-hmm.
movie. And Britt Marling, I would argue this is a version of debt. While she did do some fundraising, she used all of her personal savings to fund Sound of My Voice.
Yeah. And I mean, there's hundreds of examples of,
Crazy.
of people putting
Hundreds.
things on credit cards, on movies, filmmakers. How many filmmakers do you see interviews and they're like, I put it all on a credit card or whatever the fuck? I mean,
Your point about Francis Ford Coppola the other
yeah,
day.
it's like, I the thing is that, you are going to have to, and even the people who, Francis is a good example of somebody who was smart enough to build, although you can't tell me that there's also some debt leverage from that, but it's like, that's somebody who, he had a big secondary business he built with the vineyards, and he invested all that money into this movie. So even people who are investing, people invest their own money all the time in this business. That's a big lesson. Now, some of these people don't have the money to invest. That's why, so what are they going to do? They're going to wait till they have it? No, they have to invest what they can leverage, which is credit card debt, whatever. Like, that's why Britt Marling and Kevin Smith are on the same playing field, is because both invested their own money. One had money, one didn't. That doesn't mean that,
Yeah.
that the other one doesn't do it because they don't have the money. And it's yeah.
Well, you know what's coming up for me too in this? I just wrote down is the idea of the idea of confidence and belief.
Oh yeah.
And I would argue that this is an
Oof.
example where people often um feel like, am I willing? Am I willing to do this? Because I want to do a whole episode on confidence, because to do those things, to pull your entire savings, for Britt Marling to say, I'm gonna make sound of my voice, for Matt Damon and Ben Affleck to go, all of Goodwill Hunting on credit cards. You really have to have the belief and the confidence that it's going to pay off, even knowing that there's
Oof.
a risk involved. And this comes up, I think, a lot for people. Like, I think the lack of willingness comes from a lack of belief and a lack of confidence in oneself, which is a whole other topic, just to
And
say.
listen, this is where I get. This is the big mistake I make around debt. Is that I do not leverage it to the extent I should towards my career. I use it for creature comforts, for short term, sometimes I'll use it for growth, and that's the thing too, is let's just say this, that's another element to play here is when you're in between jobs and you haven't built up a what we call an in-between fund, which we believe everybody should ideally have, which is, you know, we just finished a show. You start one in 3 weeks. My schedule's open right now. I don't know when the next thing is coming. But
Sure.
the last thing I need to do, how am I going to supplement that money? Unemployment, that won't cut it. So, the
Yeah.
last thing I should be doing is getting a job, is going to distract myself and get another job, but
Sure.
if I don't have the funds built up to live off of in between work, then I'll have to leverage debt there as well. Now,
Yes.
that is a comfort level for everybody that's different. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule of, you know, as far as I'm concerned about, like, going into deep debt during the in between times. I don't, but one thing I can say for certain.
Well, can I say something
Go
about that
ahead.
though, just real quickly, just to say about, because where it's going to be a case by case basis. You know this about me. This is a me thing. I'm not interested in being distracted. So and by me, the distraction, like if I like, yeah, so like I start this next show as of this recording in about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah,
No money coming in. And absolutely, and we weren't making enough money on our last
that's true.
contract to assume that was going to tide us over. I absolutely am going to have to leverage some debt here, but that is, I have a shit ton of auditions. That's my focus. What we do, our podcast, our work, my auditions, looking for, and I have all the other shit that I have to do. That is my work, prepping for the show. I don't have time, and so to me, that's somewhere where savings and debt continues to be a balancing act.
Right.
Just to say,
A
I
hundred
cut you
percent.
off.
No,
What were you going
I
to
don't disagree with that. And it's that
say?
it's a level of, because, and I think we'll get to this isn't a carte blanche. What I just want to be clear about, because where I go is that this isn't carte blanche. Go, debt, yay. That's, debt is not ideal. Just, I don't think there should be shame around it if you are, again, leveraging it in a way that makes sense. If you are investing it towards growth, and I would argue that, you are investing it towards growth because you're giving yourself time, right? That time is not
Yes.
spent going to go work for somebody else. That time is, so that is to buy you some more time so that you can use that time for
Yes.
growth. But then again, but this is where I get a little like, you know, is that, well, use it for growth. And I know you are, but it's like, I find myself placating myself sometimes with debt. Oh, it's okay. Oh, it's no biggie. It's what it is. Sometimes I placate myself with it to an extent because I do believe that it's a necessary evil, but that doesn't mean I should accept, uh,
No, I
or I
think
should
I think this
approve,
is
I guess.
I think this is really good, because I want to talk. I want to get, well, first of all, I want to talk about that, about like like some of the big cons of assuming debt, right? Because I don't think we should, I don't want this to all be about like, so go rack up that debt, y'all. But let's also just quickly identify, some assumed debt that actors carry.
No.
Number one, obviously student loans. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, the average student loan debt for performing arts graduates is approximately $26,000. Mine was closer to 75, but that had to do with other things too. But that's the average for performing arts graduates. Most people are carrying some kind of debt. Not everybody, of course, but student loans is a big one. Credit card debt, and then we have loans for things like equipment. I mean, this is the danger of things like Affirm,
Right.
right? Which we both love. But
I
it's a
love
problem.
me some Affirm. Oh boy.
But it's a problem because part of what you're doing, the reason why this is it's so dangerous is because we're going, well, again, it's that belief, well, I'll figure it out. And now there's
Right.
something powerful in that. But all of this goes up against the backdrop, just to say, of what we already know is an inconsistent financial situation.
Yes.
We lose our jobs over and over and over again. This next contract I'm about to make, it's good money that I'm making doing it. It's lasting a month. It is a month. So what am I going to do? Like, and I would argue, I don't know if this is true for you, but sometimes when you're working, you live life as though like this is always going to be your life.
That's true. That's true. Which again is, look, I'm not saying that. This is why I think debt accumulation needs to be paired, frankly, with kind of a Spartan lifestyle in some ways, which you and I are not good at. You and I like our creature comforts to an extent.
Sure. Yes.
But, I think you're totally right about when you're working. Ooh, like, still, it's hard not to continue to live like a pauper in some ways. It's hard. It's hard. And
I think about that with the the big gigs I've had. Sometimes it's like, God, do I wish I had, not taken 4 Ubers home a night. During the week of 8 2. I didn't need to take. I would take sometimes 4 Ubers.
Yeah,
because I was making a good amount of money. What if I did not do that and I saved that $250? So on top of losing our jobs, there's no consistency in the income. You never know what that amount of money is going to be. That's true for Broadway too. When I covered Gavin and Les Mis, if I went on, you got an extra $250 a show. If I went on for a week, sometimes I was making close to $5,000 a week.
Right.
I say this as a problem, actually, because there's no consistency in the income. And as we've often talked about, we often feel so constrained by short-term needs that you don't often feel like we're even able. So I'm painting this picture in terms of like what we know to be our dangerous financial situations. But so let's talk about some of these cons.
Yeah.
A big one, and I think a lot of people feel this, is that there's this financial pressure. I don't know about you, but I know for myself, I mean, I've learned to withstand it over the years. But that financial pressure creates a shit ton of stress and anxiety on top of an already exhausting career. I mean,
it's true. Makes me
think about, I'm thinking about, we'll talk about rejection another time, but we deal with so much pain. And to add on to the pain of this business, these financial pressures where we're not seeing the returns more often than not. To quote Hormozy, an entrepreneur is being, punched in the stomach over and over again. You really have to consider your mental health. No bullshit. You really have to go, am I the kind of person who is able, we were saying this earlier, to withstand this stress and
I think I
anxiety?
take it for granted always how tough of a skin you need to have, because, it's like I was like, this thing that it looks like I'm not going to book. I assumed I was going to book. I am not. I assumed this was in the
Which
bag.
I think you should. I
don't think it's going to happen, but I assume it's in the bag.
No, but I'm just saying, like, you going to that space, I think, is kind of necessary.
Exactly. So you know, because I was like really happy with my work, da, da, da. And then, you know, this would have been like ridiculous amounts of money. I was basically, you know, like telling the story in my head and to like close people that I booked it. And I was like, here's all the things I'm going to do
I'm gonna buy my
to buy my
house.
house. And you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and what's wild is, you know, okay, so that doesn't go. And guess what? It's like you said, that emotional rejection on top of the, like, you know, that
Exactly.
monthly
Mike's
minimum
Mike's
payment.
knocking for those listening. He's knocking on the
Yeah, that
door.
monthly minimum
Exactly.
payment, you know,
Exactly.
the knocking on the door. It's
Exactly.
it's 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 on top of emails not being responded to, on top of people ghosting you, on top of nobody giving a fuck about you. I mean, it's wild when you think about just how fucking difficult this business is. It's just like, and so the financial elements are like, it's like a cherry on top. It's like when you thought it couldn't get any worse, you know, it's like, and that's why, yes, like,
That cash twink comes right back to try to suck you
I mean,
dry. You
I've
know?
been doing this for 10 years, you know,
Yeah.
and like, you know, am lucky enough that over the past 2 years I have made consistent money acting, which is a first time,
Yeah.
which is the first time ever that, you know, and by no means am I okay, right? But I've made
Right.
consistent money acting, you know, and when you, I just always take for granted when I really stop and think about how fucking hard this business is. God, it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, so that, so the cons of, like, you know, just put the cons of the financial pressure are the cons of like just continually to put yourself through the ringer, you know. And look, it could not work. I mean, I really do believe that it will work. I really believe that if like, you know, it can work, and it will work. But like in reality, it could not work. Like you could never get out of, you've worked with old ass people who are in debt up to their ears, and it's like, and
Well, you bring up two really important points. There's no guarantee on the investment. And I just want to say then that when you continue to invest, having accruing more debt could then subsequently do two things: emotionally, figuratively hinder your ability to take ongoing necessary
oof,
risks,
oof.
and or literally stop you from going, no, you don't have any more to take. There's no more money. There's no more. You will reach a credit limit potentially. You can't. And so then you're balancing, because then you brought up another point. Another big con of carrying debt is that when you have those knock, knock, knock monthly, or in my case, because you know I deal with it weekly, just from my just the way I work, repayments can be sometimes near impossible. Because if you're carrying the debt and we have this fluctuating income, and you're, let's even take your whatever the secondary income business is, whatever that is, which might not, you know, there, as we've many times, there are months, Mike, when we've made good money, and months when we've made no money, you know, from our other work. And that makes it all the more challenging to really consider debt, to say nothing of the fact that this could then put your personal future and real liability.
Well, you know what's coming up for me too? It's just like, you know, I referenced this the last episode. You know, when we did that actors connection event, and that woman was like, and we can all go on vacation, whatever the fuck she said.
Right,
Like,
right, 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 right.
and you know, I've been thinking about this. I would love to live in a house upstate, do theater, commute into the city, be making, you know, whatever, like 250 a year doing that. That would be my dream. That's my dream. Okay.
250K.
250K, no,
You're like, no,
dollars.
$250.
250K a year, like, doing
Yeah.
like, whatever, Broadway, combination of Broadway and TV or whatever.
Sure.
That's the dream. And to have a family.
Sure.
But that's my dream. But I'm gonna be, and yes, working towards it. But listen. I think about people I know with kids in this business. I know two people in particular are coming to my mind who have a daughter, and they're both actors, and very talented, and it's just, now look, we all have different priorities, but it is hindering. They're in their 40s, like, early 50s, and
Is this the
no.
Hmm.
LOL at that. They don't have financial
Well, I wasn't sure if your
problems.
point.
No.
That's what I was saying. I wasn't sure if that was the point you were getting.
No, but this is no, this is you don't know these people. But I just
Okay.
think about, I don't know if that's in my cards. When I just think about what it's going to really take, I don't know if you can have it. I mean, look, I would love it and I want to work towards it, but if number one is growing a career, doing this, that's going to it's hard enough. Listen, I know, because this is all about investment of time, energy, and money. I mean, it's hard having a partner. I love being in a relationship, but it's hard. It is challenging being in a
course.
relationship because
Of course.
it requires time, energy, and you want to give time, energy, and commitment. And I have a pretty lax, like she's chill about it, but and she's also in the business, so she gets it. But there's just not a lot of room, and so.
Well, let me counter that. Can I counter that for one moment?
Sure.
Because you're saying that based on somewhat. I'm so sorry. Something stuck in my throat. You're saying that partially based on being somewhat in the still honeymoon stage of dating. Why do I say this? Because I was talking with someone. I'll say the name and you'll bleep it out. Who's considering, and I want to talk about them later, coming back to, I thought I even had this. Oh, maybe interesting. Yeah, I thought I had. Oh, no, that's next episode. Sorry. They were talking about coming back to the city and taking on debt, and they're alone. They're single. And for me, like with Michael, we are able to sort of be a cushion as necessary. There have been times when I've been able to help us more and vice versa. So I'm saying it because there's also something to said for being completely alone in racking up debt and not having someone in your
Bring
life
someone
who
else
can
down there
support
with you. Yeah, bring someone
no,
else
but
down
you know
to
what
the
I'm
pit.
saying.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
And because I actually I talked about them last time, and I'll say their name again with lots of bleeping in this episode. But I'm telling you how there's no way that person would be able to have that family, without the support of a partner like that.
And look, I guess all of this has to go to the fact of belief. Like, look, I actually do believe that I will be able to have those things. Part of me is
Sure.
believing. A large part of me still believes that. However, I need to
Sure.
be prepared to not have those things.
Mhm.
I need to be prepared to not be financially successful. I need to be prepared to have, and why does this all relate to debt? Because, the biggest balance is that you have to invest with the belief it's going to work out. But this is also what you're talking about with, I don't know if this ever goes away, because you never fucking, I mean, God, how many you could list on multiple hands, people that we know who have blown up, have had big opportunities and then have not worked again. It's just like you
Sure.
just do not
Yeah.
know what this is, and
You're so funny. I'm not sure if I told you this. I was, I went for this show the other day, and the person who went before me was a Tony nominee who hasn't worked in nearly a decade.
wow.
And the person who went right after me is someone I used to watch on Broadway all the time. She was so incredibly nervous. Um, and uh, uh, I'm saying it because I heard her on the phone talking about how badly she needed the job. I used to watch her as a kid on Broadway
Oof.
Leads all the time. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. And
And
so
it's
this kind
getting
of goes back to
harder,
the
by the way.
emotion,
This is what we're always
and it's
talking
getting
about.
harder.
The middle class is
It's
gone.
getting harder.
The middle class
Yep.
is, I mean, we're at the end of the I want to, when we talk about late stage capitalism, we are at the end of the American experiment. I mean, that sounds pretty, that sounds pretty dire and Brown sounds pretty terrible, but it's like, and look, what's interesting about debt is debt's a large reason why we are at the end of the empire right now. Debt is, debt is, morally and everything is, this is what leads. So we are at the end here. And so so what's vicious about this, right? In some ways, it's like, and this is where you have to be a fucking narcissist and delusional, is like, yes, I understand that debt is
Thank God for yourself.
I understand debt is literally ruining the world, or the world as we know it. China's going to be in charge in 100 years. America's done. And so it's like, and that's, a lot of it has to do with debt. But I'm gonna use, I mean, this is where you have to be fucking crazy. You're like, but that's not gonna happen to me. I'm gonna be able to,
Right.
I'm gonna,
Right.
because you have
Right.
to, because what other
disagree.
choice do, I guess the other choice that you have, which is totally valid, is to like, listen, to like, I don't know, go start a theater at in your local community, and like, and grassroots fundraise. But I mean, I love your face about you, as somebody who ran a theater company for 7 years. How often were you guys piling up, or almost
Non-stop. Cash flow was a fucking joke. That's actually again why artist strategy was even somewhat considered. I was like, wait a second. There has to be a better way. You know what I was actually
God.
going to say was, to your point was, well, isn't this funny? How many people do we see pivot? We see people pivot left and right in this business. And not that it all comes back to debt, but we're talking about just sort of
Right.
like the difficulty of navigating and reaching the level. And again, it's everybody's goals.
Right.
Michael and I, we talk about, having kids sometimes too. But it's the same conversation of like, well, I often say when people even, I always say, it's like, I need more money first. I would need more money to put myself in a position where I could take on
Oof.
a child and support them healthfully while still growing a business.
Really quick, so sorry, before you pivot.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Because I want to make a point about even like, if you want to make art, in 2024, whether it's you are probably 95% of the time gonna have to go into debt. I do not.
Yeah.
I would love to, or if you're independently wealthy, or if you're networking with incredibly high, like I was thinking about, I wonder if Jeremy O'Harris has had to invest any of his own money into anything he's done. Who knows? Think about somebody like super hot like that. Like, yes, some people have patrons and these, and look, we can work towards that as well, but you are probably going, just to make art, you are probably going to have to acquire debt. It's just,
and doing that in Los Angeles or London or New York City. Are you kidding me? I mean, just producing, it's like one thing to produce your short film in Minnesota, right? In the downtown empty street with the, the library maiden that can give you the back room for free. And it's another thing to, like, try to shoot in your own apartment with your nightmare Nazi Walt Disney landlord who won't even let you. I mean, it's like
Cunt.
everything's crazy. You fucking cocksucker.
Well, let's be real. The landlord's probably Jewish. Anyway, so this
so I think
facts.
the thing that I do want to talk then about, per your point, for the point that we keep making about, like, assumedly accruing debt, is then a balance to be struck with management.
Right.
What are some considerations to find a balance here? Because this has been, again, for years now. You and I have had this conversation, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, and maybe I'm somewhat misremembering, but if I may, when we first started really having this conversation, you were like, you always would say, I want to talk about debt, and if it is, if it's if we should essentially be promoting debt, which we're not promoting it, but having this conversation around it. And my argument, remember, was always like, well, it's partially how you are dealing with it in the immediate as well, like how you counter the taking on of debt.
You can accept, and something. I'll take a phrase from God, I hate it when people do that. It's so annoying. I'll take a phrase from recovery.
I've never heard that.
I've heard people say that shit all the time.
It's the Al-Anon in me. I haven't heard.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Yet,
well, it's just it's something.
Mike says I'm Al-Anon.
It's such a flex to be in recovery. It's like you're a loser. Anyway, but I'll take something. I'll take something from her.
Is it a flex?
It is kind of in some sort. I guess with like straight people, straight dudes. You can accept, but you don't have to approve. And this is where I'll be honest with you. I'm too lenient. I am too lenient because how do you manage this? You need to be on your money like white on rice. That is the very first step. The first step is that tracking every dollar that comes in.
Why not brown on rice?
Oh, why not? Well, you can be tracking your money like every color, LGBTQ on rice, whatever, everything on rice. You need to be, every dollar spent, every dollar coming in.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yes.
I still think that.
Yes.
And if you are really I still think daily is not a bad idea for some people out there. Daily, what is going in, what is coming out? That awareness, financial, because you are taking this risk, and because you are quite literally dancing with the devil. And I don't. It's not an over exaggeration to say that dancing with debt is dancing with the devil. You need to make sure that you do not end up in a situation where all of a sudden, without you being aware, you are just in way over your head.
So the macro point you're making, constant awareness, 100%. I don't know if this is still your process. For me, every single week, every Thursday, I go account by account, and I actually I do weekly payments,
which is smart.
I do weekly payments because it allows me to manage it more clearly, to sometimes pay more based on, like, I can track. I've updated our what we give for artists, our financial tracking doc, a lot for myself, that now tracks the amount of debt I carry, so that I can sort of also see how it's going, or minimizing every single week. But most importantly, yes, tracking what comes in, tracking what goes out, not just debt wise, but that you can have, because our budgets are constantly changing. I also believe in reshaping your budget quarterly, because, and it's so funny, whenever we ask artists to build budgets, they always say, oh, well, last month was an outlier. Literally every time. Right. It cracks me up.
Yeah, and
I'm like, well, of course.
And that hyper awareness and that hyper communication of, and I love, E-Clay said something which I thought, when we did E-Clay, who talk about like a gambler, talk about a risk taker, and somebody who's managed all of these things, remember when he was like I don't think you mind us saying he was like a what he was doing, like not paralegal work, but like, he makes money off of his Broadway investments, but he was
Yes.
doing paralegal work or some shit. It's like somebody who
Yes.
balances all of these things, including probably debt, short-term income, all of these things, I would assume. But where it was like,
I know. Well, actually, I don't think he'd mind me saying this. I mean, I've talked to him a lot, and there are, as someone who has a lot of diversified income, there are times like he'll literally say, he'll be like, "Girl, it's tight this week. I just had to put $7,500 into this investment for this next show." He's like, I'm it's tight for a month, and then he'll get Hadestown or whatever, whatever. And again, he wouldn't mind me
and
saying
so
that,
it's
and then he
but
sort of
that's
balances out again.
and that's the thing is, it is a diligent. I'll be like, the realization I have, especially because I was telling Carolina this. This is like me coming off. I've worked consistently for a year. This is the I've worked pretty. I've gone from literally from actually job
You
to
have,
job to job to job
you
for a
have,
year.
literally, yeah,
And now this is my first time in a year staring at an open schedule. I have nothing. I don't know what's on the horizon. You know,
right.
and so and it's just like a lot of things are just coming where me realizing like, wow, I need to really double down in a lot of a lot of respects, because with this conversation about diligence, 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 like and making sure and getting out of the comfort crisis of, no, when it is tight, because that's what's dangerous for me, is that when it's tight and I continue to live at the my problem is I continue to live at a certain level, and
Sure,
that's when I
sure.
take on debt, which I don't think is the move. I think the move is that when the money's not coming in, you live more frugally. I mean, that's obvious. I'm
You might have
saying
to
this.
pivot. You might have to pivot. I would also, though, but let me also counter that. I'm not saying I'm good at this at all, because I really, for me, I'll just say part of my, you say, we say, create comfort, but I like to have a sense of normalcy. It's very important to me.
Sure.
I like to be to just to say, when I'm in a job too, how do you go, well, I still need to, and this is where a budget comes into play.
Right.
Let me live my life within a budget of potentially far less than I'm making. In fact, when I was working on Broadway, I told you this. I didn't take all that money home. I wanted a consistent paycheck. So, and I had an LLC at the time, so I was paying myself the same amount of money, so that was the number I got, because that was something I always craved. I don't want $4,000 a week. I want the same, after taxes, DDD. I want the same 1,500. That's what I want. And I don't, that's all I have. And that's all my mind can sort of wrap its head around, because then I can maybe plan more for the future. So to continue to talk about the balance to be struck, we're talking about keeping debt manageable by overall awareness. I do want to say that what I just said about long-term planning is an important piece of this. What are the long-term goals we're working towards? How are we also contributing to our 401ks or long-term investments or whatever that might be for ourselves? This is tricky, I think, for people to do. To be 100% myself, I usually make weekly contributions to my IRA. Absolutely, over the past couple of months, given some expenses and the money we were taking, and I wasn't making those contributions
Yeah.
weekly, it's something that's on my horizon that I would argue a lot of artists have a tendency to avoid. But how you balance this with the debt is to go, I would argue, because you've talked about long-term planning yourself a bunch, and how debt can really be a knife in that back, is that if you are considering what that is, whether that's an investment in a piece of property, whether that is making sure your retirement is growing consistently, whether that's just general investments, quote unquote, whatever
And
that
that's
looks
where
like for
financial
you.
tracking is useful, because look, even in our whole
Yes.
financial tracking
Yes.
system of like, even if you have to put zero down, zero zero zero, like when it comes to your IRA investment, zero
Yes.
zero zero zero
Yes.
zero 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 zero, still the process of doing that,
Yes. The
the
story.
story, and it just keeps it on the, like what you're saying, keeps it on the horizon. It may not mean that you're going to invest anything for a minute, but it just keeps it so that, okay, when you do hopefully start making some money, you have always had these things on the horizon. Always have had these things,
Sure.
and that's why we encourage people sometimes to save 2% towards this thing. Is it
Half a
half a
percent.
percent? Does it make a difference? No, it does. But
Yes.
it no, and yet it doesn't make a difference
No, meaning
monetarily.
no, it meaning yes, you're right. Not,
Yeah,
not
no, but
yes, it
yes,
makes
it
a
does make a
difference.
difference here. It makes a difference, and I'm pointing to my brain
Sure.
for people who are,
Yeah.
it makes a difference here of like getting yourself into the habit, and that's the thing with the long-term planning, it's like the risk we are taking is that yes, you will see a larger financial return later. It could be when you're in your 50s. I think about someone just because she's at the theater we worked at, she's big. Ann Dowd. I wonder, when did she really start to see money, like real money? You know what I mean? From her career, real money. You know, and it's like even someone like Lori Metcalf, who's always worked. Well, she had Roseanne, so that doesn't really count. She was making a lot of money from that, probably. But you know what I mean? It's like, but if you have
Yeah.
always built the habit of distributing money across these things, even if it's $1. I'm going to save $1 this week. I know that makes no difference in the real world, but it makes a difference in the inner world.
Sure, of course. No, no, no. It
Faggots.
actually, well, the word, the word you used in relation to that saving $1, it I often say is just building the system, building the
Right.
habit. So I am on the path. It might
Right.
feel like, to quote that financial advisor you spoke with, we're misting
Misting
buckets,
buckets.
but a
That's,
lot of
yeah.
but I would argue that there's some value in being in that state, of being able to do that. I also just want to state an obvious two other big points here. One, avoiding high interest debt. Like, you can make smarter decisions with the kind of debt you accrue by making sure you're not taking on debt that with a
Right.
29% APR. I mean, that's crazy. You really need to go like, okay, and potentially I might need to consolidate and shift and potentially even take out a loan sometimes to pay down debt. I think of Michael's dad. He always, he's was in development, and he did appraisal work for
Right.
money, but he developed a lot of properties. And he said, he loves what we do because it's so, as an entrepreneur himself, he would say, like, early on, like, I was just moving debt from one credit card to the next to get it to the 0% APR and living off of those various credit cards while I made this investment that's now paying off, and he's in his 70s. So it's again, this risk we keep talking about in all of
Growth. This is
things.
all about, and this is one thing that's really, I think, coming up, even telling that story, because look, and I would argue that he would not have done it any differently. He probably would not have done. And look, yeah, your 70s, you're enjoying the fruits of your labor. I absolutely. It just depends on, what you're about. If you are about growth and growing something, right? And that's the thing is like, I really do believe, well, I don't know. We have only one life to live, right? I'm saying this because I think growth, this is what a lot of self-help people say, like Tony Robbins says, growth is probably what we're here to do. If we're here to do one thing, it's to grow. And look, that isn't, I don't think entirely that's true for everybody, but I know, on my good days, that's what I am trying to do. I'm trying to grow. And I say this because, you know, it may take decades. I know I keep bringing up David asked me that living on the couch or living in the architect's cottage or whatever. You could be in your 60s and still be not that well off as you were in your 30s. And it is about, are you going to keep going until, and keep trying or not? And I'm not, I don't know. That's because that's what the debt is. Because, like, the reason why I say this up, then please respond, is because, like you're saying, there is no guarantees. There is no guarantees that you are going to see that money, that you are going to make enough money and get to the point where that investment made sense. The investment made sense, and so
Well, I
yeah,
mhm. I definitely the thing I just want to underline though, and it kind of goes back to the top of the episode, although I do want to say one more important thing about balancing debt after we pivot here for a moment, is again just that, and I don't know, you might have a different school of thought. I don't see it as an option for most
I agree.
actors.
I agree with that.
And so, listen, you might disagree, listener, watcher, viewer. Sound off in the comments. You might completely disagree. That's fine. But we are positing that this is a reality for entrepreneurship. Doesn't matter what the fuck you're in, and let alone our business, which is so much more challenging, so much more challenging, and yet we somehow think we're immune to it.
And would it be any other way? I mean, you want to make a living doing what? Like,
Right, right.
at the end of the we're here at the end of the world. AI's taking over. Everything is falling apart. Like, human beings are becoming irrelevant in so many ways in this sector. And you want to make a living playing pretend and going up on stage, and you
Right,
don't think that
right.
it's going to take every ounce of your being, and that it's going to be the most amount of responsibility. It's going to take pressure and responsibility. And it's, yeah. And every that, and look, I'm not good at this next, the thing about, you know, paying
But I
down.
want to finish one more
Yes.
point
Yeah.
about about the income
Oh,
diversification.
yes, please.
Because I just want to say that if you're going to carry debt, another real consideration here in terms of being able to balance that, and we've been talking somewhat about this over and over again, is just the idea of making sure you are diversifying your income. So for some people, even if it's all in on one form of secondary income, you know because we have these waves, making sure that you have, whether that's through investments, whether that's, oh, I'm going to teach over here, whether it's I'm going to monetize X, Y, or Z content, whether it's I'm going to, what our buddy Bill, who we just did this play with, he owns a piece of property and rents it out, and that sort of is a source of income for him. I've told you that's something I've always sort of been interested in. This is one way to
Producing,
consider how.
producing, pack, getting, investing in shows, all of these different, or in a movie or whatever the fuck.
Yes. Yes. And again, it's not that it's easy, but if you're going to be in a situation where you're taking on debt, we know that's going to be the case. Being able to diversify income along the way is I would argue pretty crucial to making sure you don't find yourself in a pit. Again, when we talk about Ryan Reynolds buying Mint Mobile, I promise it's not because he loves cell service. It's because he loves money, and he's probably like, yeah, this is going to be one more investment I make before I do my next Hollywood blockbuster. That was just the last point I wanted to
Yeah.
make. What were you going to
and,
say?
and let me just say, quite literally, one thing that I find useful, and that is part of our system, is take your minimum monthly payment, divide it by 4, and pay.
Yes.
So if my minimum monthly
Oh,
payment,
yes.
just for ease of
Please
math,
pay more than the
is,
minimum payment,
if
folks. Please.
it takes, you take $100, divide it by 4, and I pay $25 the first week, $26 the second week, 27, 28.
Yes.
Go up $1 each week,
Yes.
and do that,
Yes.
and to the best of your ability, with all of your,
even if you have to reset every month,
even if you have to
reset and do the same
and
thing,
even if you are even if you
just-
are actively using those cards as you are paying them down.
Yes.
And this is where the insanity
Yes.
comes to play. Is it absolutely insane to be paying down a credit card while you are using it? Absolutely, it is crazy. But what are the other choices? I don't know what the other choices are. I really don't know what the other choices are, except getting
for
money,
many people.
borrowing money
Yeah.
from somebody else, or from a parent, or a
Right.
friend, or
making more
or
money,
making
or go make
or
more
go
money.
make more money. Absolutely, which is not always within your control. I would say not always, and it's not always a short term okay, I'll go out and make a ton of money
Right.
today. That's what we're all trying to do, is trying to make a ton of money for
Right.
the long term. But even if you are still actively using those cards, I just want to say this about managing debt, still pay them down as you use them. As crazy
Yes.
as that seems, I don't know what other options we have. I really don't. Unless you have a guardian angel who's, you know, helping you out. I don't know.
Well, again, everybody's situation is going to be
Sure.
different, obviously. When it comes to um their financial circumstance. And that includes, accruing debt based off of whatever income, whatever your goals might be, and whatever your risk tolerance is. This is an important point to make because even though we are saying as an entrepreneur and especially as an
Yeah.
artist and an actor, you will likely accrue debt at some point. I know many, many people who are not comfortable with this, are terrified of it, and it cripples them. And if you are that person and it's going to stop you from moving forward, well, then you've got to make the decision that's best for you,
Right.
inclusive of, am I prepared to really tackle this business in the modern
Right.
world? To your point about AI, I was talking to Chow the other day. This He's an artist, but he's comes from the tech world, and he's going to go back. He took a few years off from work, and I was like, what sector are you going to go into now? And he's like, I think AI. He's like, it's the future. And the reason I was I was chuckling is because, to your point about like us being like, please, I really want to do my production of Merchant of Venice in Arizona for $623 a week. Like, we we're living in 1992 where
Oof.
most people are looking towards the future of just what income is. And I say it because it's just hilarious. Like, we're not only in like one of the most competitive, unstable, unstructured businesses in the world, but we're also kind of stuck in the past, which is why the episode that came out today with Clayton Howe is a great one
And,
to
and
listen
you
to.
know, you
Episode
make a
27 by the time you listen
you
to
make a
this.
you make a financial. That's the thing, right? Is that, like, I don't think you can have it all. And per your point,
Right.
maybe all you want to do is do Shakespeare. That's maybe
Sure.
all you want to do, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You just,
Yeah.
but as we are moving towards the end here, and the income gap is growing, will have to accept, if your life is spent doing Shakespeare, that's what your life is
Yeah.
spent doing, like all over the country, you are probably not going to make enough money to live. Probably not. Probably not. You are probably still going to have to cobble an existence together with secondary income and with debt. And that is okay. And that's fine. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. But I would assume
No.
you probably can't. I actually know two people who are very much, a lot of bleeping, having a lovely
Yes.
apartment,
Yeah.
amazing. Like, they're in their 50s, probably almost getting on to 60s now. They are secondary income. Secondary income. They both have secondary income streams that they have complete control over. They act regionally all over the country all year round. They do not have children. They do not make probably enough money to be able to. And it's like everything comes with a sacrifice, I guess is what I'm saying. And look, I know you and I both have big aspirations. We both have
Sure.
big aspirations. Well, the debt is even more relevant, not just in the workaday actor lifestyle, but at the top. You're going to need more debt. You're going to need debt there too.
Well, exactly. At all levels, one could assume. That's why I'm saying it like it's gonna
Yeah.
depend on on everybody's. It's gonna be a person to person. But please do let us know your
Yeah.
thoughts on debt for artists. We like this
The
conversation.
final
We
thing I
think
want to
it's
say
an
about the
important one.
money thing really quick, because
Yeah.
I want to get your thought about this. You know how there's this,
Hmm.
and this is where the bullshit of actor career coaches and all this crap about no more starving artist, thriving artist. I call kind of bullshit on that. I call bullshit on that.
Well, in what sense? Because I hear you, but
I think about Michael's father. I think about people I know who make living acting and how hard it is. The only way you can truly thrive as an actor is if you're at the top. And if you have
Well,
secondary
thrive financially,
financially. Also
which
if
I
you have
think is your point
secondary
about. I
income
think you're.
streams that you're able to look with the democratization of content and entertainment, there's tons of ways to make money. Absolutely. But to make enough money to get, but
Well,
this is where we at in
what I hear
society.
you saying, what I hear you saying, and it is true, is like this is such an artist thing to do, right? Like I'm reclaiming it. No more starving artist. It's a thriving artist time. Okay, based on what? Like based on
Your feeling?
well, exactly. Like, oh, okay, great. So you're going to start a production company and you're going to start developing your own work and churning an income from like that. That's what you mean, right? Not just like my spirit rejects the notion of the starving artist. It's like that's very
And if you
nice.
want to
I
be a
love that.
thriving art, think about, okay, I want to be a thriving art. I think about people who have built empires. Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is a 24/7 machine, who did not come from financial means, who's been down and out, who has, I don't think he was saying back there, I'm thriving. He was getting by, growing something for the future. I basically what I'm getting at with this, why I call bullshit on the thriving artist and the starving artist thing, is because if you're trying to grow something big and make true wealth, you will have to starve now, probably. You may have to starve for
Yeah,
decades. You may have to starve for decades. I would say, because what I'm trying to get at here is with the debt stuff is it's necessary evil, but it's not carte blanche to be like, yeah, like I'm just gonna be like, it is a commitment.
turn it into action. Like you have to stay forward-footed, smart, aware, responsible, goal driven.
Yes,
These things have to pair with the dangerous art of carrying debt, which is again part of just what our
a
lives are.
commitment to an artist lifestyle. I believe, especially if you are trying to grow something massive, is a commitment. And I don't embody this as I sit here with my pit vipers, which were not super expensive, but you know, is a commitment to poverty for a while, of not having a lot now to have more later. That is,
Absolutely.
and so the debt, absolutely, it's part of it, but it doesn't mean, in my personal opinion, where I have a problem with it, and this is personal, nothing to do with the debt, because I don't use it for growth all the time. I use it to maintain a lifestyle, which I understand the importance of what you're talking about to an extent, of maintaining a lifestyle, but I use it to maintain something when I do not have money coming in all the time, which,
Sure.
as opposed to
Yeah.
like really using it strategically and wisely to be like, how am I growing?
Based on growth.
Exactly.
Based on growth. Exactly.
Cunt.
Every episode, folks, just so you know, we do what we call comfort food performances,
Right.
which are featuring our. We have slightly different definitions. Mine is just I sort of encapsulate favorite performance as of late, but it also could mean performances we want to go back to time and time again. I have one. We watched The Celebration the other day. Really
The
good
Celebration.
movie. Yeah, it's from like the 90s. I didn't know this, so I haven't heard this phrase dogma movie. I hadn't
Oh,
heard
yeah.
that. I didn't know what a dogma movie was. This is a dogma
Oh.
movie.
Oh, wait, it's a dog.
Um,
The dog, like Lars von Trier.
exactly. So
Okay.
like it's like no bells and whistles.
No lighting. It's all
it's
natural light, right? Shit like
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Really, really good movie. I can't remember. Maybe it's in the Netherlands. I don't know where it's set. It's a foreign movie. And there's one.
You're getting all
There's lots of
cultured.
good performances.
Jesus.
But there's a really great performance by a guy named Thomas Bo Larson. He plays this, like all the kids had been molested by the dad,
Right, of
and
course.
he plays this.
Oh, this is them at
he
dinner, right?
plays
They're at dinner.
well, the dad's birthday
Right.
celebration is great movie, and Thomas Bo Larson gives a really complicated, nuanced, painful performance in it.
I
So
have to
that's
see
that's
that
my
movie.
comfort.
I've
food
heard
for
such.
performance. Yeah, it's really good.
You're on like a little
Really good.
cultural thing here.
Am I?
Well, yeah. What? Who made you watch that, Michael?
Yeah, because I guess Michael's gonna make a Dogma movie.
Fun.
But no, well, and yes, to your point, Michael picks 99.9% of what we watch, mainly because I'm so fucking overwhelmed
No.
by how much there is
That's
to
true.
watch that I just don't care. If anything, my new kick, by the way, for what it's worth, I love Below Deck. Have you seen Below Deck?
No.
It's this stupid reality show.
You know that all I
that
watch
takes
is
place on a
trash.
yacht.
I'm trying to get better with.
Well, start watching Below Deck. It's
well,
good.
because you know what I watched last night because I worked like 12 hours yesterday, and then at the end of the day, like I was still doing some stuff, but it was all kind of mindless shit I had to do. I threw on Sudden Death. Oh, this is a great movie. Jean-Claude Van Damme. Do you know who Jean-Claude Van Damme is?
First of all, of course I do. I just love that you love these movies.
Oh, I love these movies. My fat ass. My dream is to go back in time and be in one of these movies. To be the bad guy. Tyrone Powers is in this movie. Who's like, pretty big theatrical actor. He's the bad guy in it. Jean-Claude Van Damme, I have to give him the comfort food performance and everything he does, whether it's Bloodsport.
Tyrone Powers or Powers Booth?
Oh, Powers Booth. What did I say? Tyrone Powers. Powers Booth, of course. Powers Booth is in it. Just so basically the premise is it's the Stanley Cup, and which is hockey for all you gays out there. It's like the hockey it's like the hockey Super Bowl.
Honestly.
So it's the Stanley Cup, and the vice president is coming to see this game, and these terrorists basically infiltrate the Stanley Cup and hold him hostage, and they've set up bombs all around. The audience doesn't know, the spectators don't know. It's all like happening behind the scenes. But there's bombs all over the stadium, and they're going to blow up the stadium at the end of the game if they don't get $1 billion, $2 billion into these Swiss bank accounts. And so Jean-Claude Van Damme is a simple security guard who, of course, knows, is a black belt in like Aikido and karate, who oh man, great. Just a great 90s.
So is this the comfort food performance? I can't tell.
No, actually, it's Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice. No, of course, yes. This is the comfort food performance is
Jean-Claude
Van Damme.
He's
just he's Belgian. What is he, Belgium or something? And God, the body.
I don't know.
Look up some pictures of Jean-Claude Van Damme's body right now. Oh my God! I mean, he's big. He's just big, but he's cut and he's just,
it's like not really. I'm not saying he's unattractive, but it's like not really my thing.
I know, yeah, you're into whatever, but it's just like his.
No, but I value it. I appreciate it.
And he's just wild. I love him. The end.
Jean-Claude and Tom Cruise.
Jean-Claude and Tom Cruise, exactly.
Daddies.
My daddies, my fathers.
Okay, till next time, friends.
Goodbye. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode of the Creative Risk Podcast. If you did, a review goes a long way. So make sure that you're following us on whatever platform you listen to. And if you're catching this on YouTube, be sure that you like and subscribe so that you can get alerts when new content drops. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, subscribe to us. And if you want ongoing new content that's exclusive, you can't get anywhere else, follow us on Patreon, subscribe to our Patreon for as little as $5 a month. All right, thank you, friends.